Welcome to the GAMERamble video review for Kuyo Blaster, narrated by me, Dark Cloud. As always, the text version of this review can be found on the GAMERamble website linked below. The TLDR for Kuyo Blaster is that you get to pick from an assortment of strange characters and save the Earth from an alien invasion in this quirky side-scrolling shooter. While the game only features 10 levels, it has multiple modes of difficulty, settings, special weapons, and characters to choose from. The 2D visuals look good, especially with the CRT filter enabled, and the game offers a decent challenge while remaining accessible to newcomers. It does have some annoyances though, and the quality of the English translation leaves a lot to be desired. Gameplay receives a 7 out of 10. Even with only 10 levels, the game features plenty of characters to choose from, and the different modes as well as difficulty settings shake things up a bit. Graphics receives a 7 out of 10. The 2D visuals look good thanks to some impressively large sprites, and the characters as well as bosses are unique. Sound receives a 7 out of 10. The soundtrack features a nice assortment of tunes, and the sound effects capture the spirit of the genre perfectly. The overall score for Kuyo Blaster is 7 out of 10. And now for the full review. Shooters, much like beat-em-ups, often feel the need to include the most ridiculous over-the-top stories to justify what is happening in the game. Kuyo Blaster takes the classic alien invasion trope and transforms it into what feels like a fever dream. Everything is explained in the intro cutscene and between levels, but unfortunately the quality of the translation is rather questionable. From what we could figure out, a giant asteroid is heading for Earth while carrying some nasty invaders. A group of miniature extraterrestrials decide to help Earth and contact the scientist called Mr. Cheeks to prepare a defensive force. Mr. Cheeks just so happens to be a guinea pig, and his idea of defense includes a decapitated dog head, an iron cat, some type of tomato person, a robot, and much more. What follows is a horizontal scrolling shooter that takes players through 10 levels of action. Players can choose the story mode, which chronicles the battle of Mr. Cheeks and the Earth defenders against the alien insects, or mission mode, which challenges players to accomplish specific tasks in a certain time. The game also has an unlockable arcade mode, which bumps up the difficulty to new heights. Story mode also allows players to choose their difficulty, which influences factors such as the number of lives and continues to have at their disposal. Next up, players get to choose their team, which influences which characters they can pick. Team Blood Pressure is all about dealing damage, while Team Microwave favors endurance. Then there's Team Boom, which is a mix of the two. Once a team is selected, players can then pick their character, which includes the aforementioned flying doghead Iron Cat robot, as well as Guinea Pig with a rocket strapped to its back, various anime kills, and more. The choices don't end here either, as players can also pick a special. Initially, players only have access to a super laser or shield, but the additional ones such as the Devil Rockets, Laser Sharks, and Acid Guitars can be unlocked. Once in control of their character, most shooter fans will feel right at home with Kuyo Blaster despite all the weirdness. The levels scroll from left to right, and players can only fire in one direction, so it's all about blasting everything in sight while avoiding enemy bullets. While not quite as intense as bullet hell shooters, the game does chuck a fair amount of projectiles at players, and it only takes one hit to lose their life. Fortunately, the game is quite lenient too, and after dying, players respawn on the spot instead of being thrown back to a checkpoint or start of the level. The same goes for running out of lives and continuing, so most players should have no trouble completing the game on the easiest difficulty setting at the very least. In true bullet hell fashion, the character sprites are quite big, but the actual hitbox is a small glowing circle in the middle of them, so dodging bullets is not that hard. With its 2D visuals and massive sprites, Kuyo Blaster feels like a homage to classic shooters such as Parodius. With the CRT filter enabled, the game looks like it came straight out of an arcade, and even with tons of bullets heading our way, we never experienced any slowdown. Should be mentioned that while the game initially ran at 30 FPS, the developers have since released an update that allows it to run at a buttery smooth 60 FPS. Instead of bland levels set in space, Kuyo Blaster takes players through pleasant meadows, lush gardens, and thanks to the whole miniature aspect of the game, even inside houses. Enemies are mostly insect themed, and some of the bosses are unique, to say the least. Kuyo Blaster features a decent soundtrack with a mixture of upbeat and foreboding tunes playing in the background. The sound effects are good too, but can drown out the music, as players pretty much have to hold down the fire button non-stop. Thankfully, the volume levels can be adjusted independently to get the right balance. We found the controls to be responsive, although as always playing with the controller is highly recommended. In addition to basic shots, which are unlimited, players can also pick up power-ups that grant them a limited amount of special bullets such as lasers or rockets. Destroyed enemies leave behind gems, which can be collected to fill up the special power meter. Activating this power unleashes whatever special power players chose at the start of the game, such as the shield or super laser. In addition, the game features a pulse button that, when activated, turns enemy projectiles into gems. This is especially great during boss battles when the screen can be covered in bullets but require a power-up to recharge. Between levels, players can pick a permanent power-up from a list that includes increased speed, faster bullets, extra ammunition, extended time duration for items on the screen, and more powerful basic bullets. As with most titles in the genre, QU Blaster is a relatively short game, and the levels are fairly tiny too. It's possible to complete most of the modes in about 2 hours, but getting the achievements or finishing the game without continuing, or completing the game from beginning to end on expert difficulty will take a lot more practice. The game does have some annoyances, such as shots feeling very underpowered on the higher difficulty levels, and the fact that some of the characters feel way too slow. The rough translation might annoy some players, but veterans of the genre will remember a time when this was not uncommon for shooters. Overall, QU Blaster is somewhat of a niche title due to how quirky and over the top it is. It's not a game aimed at players who will complete it once and then never again, but those willing to try out all the characters, modes and special attacks should find plenty to keep them busy. Thanks for joining me for this QU Blaster PC review. Remember to like, subscribe and share. Until next time.